So time now to go through the morning papers for you. This morning we're joined by author and broadcaster Emma Wolfe and political editor for Politics Jo Ava Santina Evans. So welcome to both of you. Good to see you both. And perhaps not surprisingly, a lot of pictures on the front pages of the police at properties linked to Peter Mandelson yesterday. We saw pictures on Sky News, now photographs on the front pages. Emma, you've picked out the Telegraph's take on this.
Yeah, so the Telegraph, although I do think headline of the day should go to The Sun, police raid Mandy's drawers. But yeah, in the Telegraph and across the Times, all of the papers really have these images of the police raiding Peter Mandelson's London home yesterday afternoon, and also there was also a subsequent raid on his Wiltshire home. Carrying out, boxes and boxes, documents and big boxes of who knows what, the documents. Yeah. And this is not, he's not being interviewed yet. There is an interview too.
No arrests either, no.
No arrests yet. I mean, there are so many aspects to this. As you guys were saying earlier, it's just unfolding hour by hour, day by day. One imagines they had a pretty sleepless night of it all. Whitehall is saying there are hundreds of thousands of Mandelson documents to be disclosed. Wow. And there are so many aspects, Ava and I were discussing, there are the victims that keep getting forgotten in all the Westminster excitement and all the panic and the furore. There's also the political vetting process, the judgment of the Prime Minister at stake, so many aspects. And then the possibility of potentially very market-sensitive information being passed over, which could be a criminal offence. So there are very many aspects to be unpacked on this one.
Yeah, Mandelson hasn't responded to the searches from yesterday, but has previously said he was wrong to believe Epstein following his conviction, and to continue my association with him afterwards, he apologises unequivocally for doing so to the women and girls who suffered. Despite the Prime Minister's apology as well.
It's a cracking statement, really, isn't it? Because, just a couple of weeks ago, he was interviewed by the BBC and he did not apologise for, the treatment of women and girls. But then I think the sort of subsequent press coverage and the subsequent furore on social media almost forced his hand.
He had to come back and do it a couple of days. It was with Laura Kuenssberg, and a couple of days later he had to come back and do it, didn't he?
Yeah, and I'm sure those women and girls really feel like that apology was, meant something after that. Let's go on to one of the other front pages that cover the same story. This is the Daily Mail. Police knock on Mandelson's door, effectively. What do you think these images will do to the kind of feeling of unrest on Labour backbenches? We've already heard a few come out and call for Keir Starmer to consider his position. No ministers as yet have done anything like that, but there is rumbling in the party and people be deeply uncomfortable. Do you think images like this will make a difference to how people feel?
Well, to backbenchers, I think that there's already sort of like fever pitch upset. On Thursday evening, I was outside Parliament rather, tactfully waiting for MPs to leave Strangers Bar, which is one of the bars inside Parliament, and several sourced MPs, sourced as in they'd had a few drinks, she sort of lamented their upset. There was genuine anger and upset, and I think they were definitely sort of drinking to forget the day.
Which specific part of it, Ava? Like the original appointment, the way the Prime Minister's handled it? Like, where is the sort of the pain for them? Is it just all-encompassing?
I think it's very much all of it. Right. I think that there's some real upset about the sort of the stink and the rot that is around the Labour Party at the moment. And there was some incredibly important legislation that was meant to travel through the Commons last week. We were talking about there was some immigration legislation, there was some secondary readings of a couple other bills. All of this was pushed to the wayside because most of the Commons' time in discussion, anything that made the papers was specifically about Mandelson. And I think there's some, there's real anger about that. And there's just, there are a lot of women who, female MPs who have fought for a very long time throughout the Conservative administration to talk about the way that women are spoken about in Parliament, to talk about just sort of the general plight that is affecting women and girls in the country. And this is the total antithesis of what they were hoping to achieve when they were in government. Stella Creasy has spoken about this at length, about what she had done for various women and girls and the sort of legislation that she wanted to travel through the Commons. This just sort of works against anything that they hope to achieve.
Yeah. I mean, And when they came into office, I think it was promised before in the manifesto, this halving of violence against women and girls. I mean, do those two things now run contrary to each other with the way that this Manson case has been handled and that sort of promise?
As Ava says, it's very, very hard for people like Jess Phillips and Stella Creasy to stand behind Starmer on this kind of subject. And also Mandelson is not just, you know, a Labour peer. He's integral to the Labour project over the last decades now.
Well, Gordon Brown has spoken out today, hasn't he, in the papers, saying he regrets appointing him.
Exactly, and he's so linked and so connected across the parties, and there's been silence from, you know, some very, very influential figures. I think this one goes really, really deep across the establishment. There is so much more to come. We keep saying that week after week, there's so much more to come out. But there is, not only on Mandelson, but on Epstein.
And mentioned earlier by Molly is the cut-through of this particular story. We talk about pressure on the Prime Minister all the time, and sometimes it's like the public, you know, the voters don't really care. We had Ian Byrne on who said that his constituents are absolutely furious. Is this one cutting through differently?
Well, people are talking about this in the pubs, and that's where you don't want people talking about it. Do you know what I mean? This has a real stink about it, and it's just, you know, the way that it is spoken about by the public is like, you know, no one cares about the nuances of, you know, Mandelson lied to me, there was some conflation, People are just looking at the cold, hard facts. It was Googleable that this man had, you know, had a conviction for... So sorry, I'm not sure how to phrase it on this early in the morning. Fraternising with children, soliciting sex from minors, right? This man had a conviction. There's a man appointed to one of the highest offices, diplomatic offices available that you could be appointed to by the UK government, and he was photographed with him. And Starmer didn't mind. You know, the vindication for Gordon Brown, who was just brought up there, who has written in The Guardian today, because when he appointed him as business secretary, these photographs weren't published.
Right.
So I think that there is some, you know, some leeway there where you can say, actually, you know, Gordon Brown didn't know about it, whereas Keir Starmer did.
Well, let's get it then. The Prime Minister said he was lied to. You know, he was lied to by a very convincing liar. But
the picture was there. Do you know what I mean? I think, you know, we can't forget, like, you know, and I know we have to say, you know, we have to discuss what Keir Starmer has said and we have to, you know, give the lines of, you know, fair right to reply. But the pictures were on Google. If you go back on Twitter and you search the official publishings of the Washington account, the UK Washington account, from that time of Peter Mandelson celebrating that he'd been appointed, what's underneath it? All of the photographs of him with Epstein, published at the time.
And we will get more details as well about what questions were asked. Keir Starmer says
what messages were sent.
All that vetting process. We are going to get released, aren't we, by the Intelligence and Security Committee when they get the documents passed to them. So there'll be more around that conversation to come. But in the meantime, let's move on to the Times, because we're talking about the pressure on Keir Starmer, and the suggestion is that there are some people who might want to be leader who might be manoeuvring. I mean, is that what you read into this headline on the front of the Times?
This is interesting from Angela Rayner. She's telling friends, apparently, that she warned Sir Keir Starmer not to appoint Lord Mandelson, that she was aware of all this and that she had said this is not a good idea. But Rayner, interestingly, using this as her own kind of, you know, her way to move gently in. We've seen Burnham doing the same thing, streeting on manoeuvres. So, you know, if Starmer is on borrowed time now, then I think Rayner is looking increasingly strong, and she's using this as her kind of springboard, isn't she? That she's whiter than white, that she is... And I think she comes across as absolutely against all this. She's very much not in that kind of old boys network. You can't imagine her being in the Epstein files. So I think she's, sees her opportunity here.
Ava, what do you make of the sourcing of this? I mean, I love that first line. Angela Rayner has told friends that she warned Keir Starmer. I mean, she's kind of keeping herself a little distance from it, but she's made it quite clear that she told her friends about this. And will this and her positioning sort of here outweigh in the public's minds any concerns they have about her tax affairs, which, of course, is the reason she had to step down?
Well, that's the issue, isn't it? And I don't think that this is about Rayner's personal ambition, and I don't think that this is about her willingly wanting to throw her hat into the ring. But I think that the situation that the Labour Party finds itself in is that you could soon, if Starmer is to go, you could have a coronation of Wes Streeting, and there is a caucus of 100 or so Labour MPs who don't want that to happen, right? And so Rayner's hand is being forced rather than her actually voluntarily wanting to become the leader of the Labour Party, because there simply isn't another viable candidate who would represent the manifesto as it was in 2024. And I think there are many people in the Tribune group who would back her, but they wouldn't do it with their it's not a wish or a desire of theirs. It's sort of it's a forcing of the hand.
They would have preferred to back Burnham. Sorry.
No, I was only going to say
They would have backed Burnham, absolutely, yeah. And you know, Rayner sort of is. She's not quite de facto Burnham. Like they genuinely have like completely different political views, especially when it comes to the bond markets. Andy Burnham thinks that doesn't believe in them, and Angela Rayner does. And the sort of. If we're going to get into Angela Rayner, there is the sort of person that she would want as her Chancellor would be like a John Healey type or a Louise Haigh type. That is not representing the left wing of the Labour Party. That is like hardcore Labour right. So she's not a choice. She's not the chosen candidate that the left would want.
But do you think the fact that there isn't a consensus around one candidate, is that partly what's stopping a proper challenge to Keir Starmer now?
Yes and no. I think it's probably the appointment of Morgan McSweeney and the continued appointment of Morgan McSweeney, who is heavily connected to the donors. If you were to pull away him from the party, there would be many businesses who no longer potentially would donate to the party. And that was one of their biggest issues that they had during the Corbyn era, was that they simply didn't have enough money. So, until he goes, Starmer or West Streeting is going to stay.
And Emma, very, very briefly, obviously we've got a couple of flashpoints coming up for Keir Starmer with a by-election at the end of this month, and then we've got the local elections coming up. I suppose any new leader isn't necessarily going to take over before a dropping at the polls,
no,
potentially.
I think Ava's being very charitable to Angela Rayner. I think there's absolutely an opportunity for her here. But perhaps this isn't, perhaps she is having her hand forced a little bit. But I think the thing, Anna, as you say, the thing that has kept Starmer going through a really quite disastrous sort of first 18 months is the fact that there hasn't been yet a plausible alternative, obvious leadership, alternative that has kept him going, kept him in place thus far. This may do for him.
How much moves on? We've got about 2 minutes left. We're going to skip away from the front of the Guardian, which is more inside sort of Labour politics.
We'll come back to that.
We'll come back to that later on, yeah. I want to talk about the story that you picked out on the front of the Telegraph about student loans. We were doing a bit on it yesterday.
Yeah.
What's this reporting now? Because this is a story that has been in the papers, I mean, it's nearly every day, and we're talking about it quite a lot on this show as well.
Yes, so, the student loans chiefs are very upset because they've lost track of nearly 400,000 graduates who are meant to be paying back their student loans. When I say paying back, I mean they're meant to be paying the interest on their student loans to these companies, and they've lost track of them. So, I mean, there's certainly... The system... We can't get into all of the detail about why it's, why the faults in the system. But one of the particular issue here is that when someone, a graduate moves overseas, or if they move to, if they become invisible to HMRC, then they no longer have to pay their student loan back.
Yes.
That's very upsetting.
Although they do write to you, as I lived overseas for a little while, and they did write to me, and I had to eventually start paying it back once...
Yeah, they kept track of me in my various comings and goings. I paid it all back.
I mean, sorry, Anna.
I was just going to say I'm ashamed, but obviously very grateful for the fact that I'm too old to have a student loan, because I was one of the lucky generation.
Do you remember that day, though, the final day when you paid off that final £100 a month, and you just
fantastic
thought...
moment.
It was. But you thought, I've paid a lot of money.
It was looking like I'm still paying mine off.
I don't want to brag, but I have actually just reached the threshold where I've stopped paying pure interest.
Oh, goodness me.
So you're on a Plan 2 loan then? So you're one of...
Yeah. I'm on when it went up to 9,250 in my second year, which, by the way, I didn't sign up to. I only signed up to 9 grand.
Oh, so it changed while you were there?
It changed while I was there, yeah.
But there are, for a lot of students that we've been talking to, that they're finding that the amount is going up the whole time because of the interest rate, and the interest rate increases when you earn more, and, getting beyond that point where they're just paying off interest feels like a long way away.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. Particularly when you look at, I could have got a supermarket loan at probably like 3% compared to what I'm paying here, which is around 9%.
Absolutely
It's astonishing.
The pressure is growing on them to do something about
It's like
it.
a Wonga loan.
Won't go.
It's more of a commitment than having a child or something, isn't it? It's a lifelong thing.
It is. That is my child.
Which continues to grow. Yeah. All right, Emma, thanks so much for that. More from you, of course, throughout the morning. And do stay with us, because, of course, Anna and I will be back with the headlines just a couple of minutes' time. I'll be here.
Yes. Stay with us.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?